Right, hello, and welcome back to Enjoy Parenting, the podcast where we try to teach you how to get the most value out of one of the best values in your life, your kids. I'm Kyle Steele. I'm the head of school at VanDamme Academy and father of one, soon to be two, not too far away from it being two.
Really?
And I'm joined by the founder of VanDamme Academy, Lisa VanDamme, mother of four. Merry Christmas, Lisa.
Merry Christmas. I'm pretty sure that just as the live stream started, I heard a little squeak of a child in the background.
Yeah, yeah, I was thinking of having him on my lap because he brought Coco on last time, but
Yeah.
he's too enamored. My sister's in town, so he's enamored with his aunt right now.
Um,
So I thought that today I wanted to pick a theme to talk about, and the theme that I want to go over is the idea of performance, and what role a child's performance should play in parenting. So there's a few things that all kind of occurred to me recently that got me thinking along these lines. We got a very nice question last time, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, about what you should do, how much you should push a child to perform better. And then I saw some friends, I've got a few friends right now that have new children, like new babies, newborns and infants, and they talk about how proud they are of how the child is doing, which struck me as a little bit strange for reasons we could get into. And then I had just a little moment where I was talking to a parent at the school that has a child Isaac's age, and I could feel myself wondering, like, is Isaac as verbal as this kid? Is Isaac as nimble, or does he have as much hand-eye coordination? And so I just want to explore a little bit what how parents should relate to this concept of performance. Is it like the primary thing? You got to make sure that your child is fit for survival and you focus on their performance. Should you have zero relationship to it and just let the child unfold as who they are, and kind of how we relate to it? I don't have a simple answer. I've got a lot of subtle nuances to it, but that's the theme I want to go into today. Do you have any initial thoughts or for things that come
yeah. I mean, obviously, it's a complex issue and we could go in any of a number of directions with it. But the very first one that occurs to me is that a big part of being a good parent, I think, is being psychologically self-aware yourself. So understanding what is motivating your desires for your child or your way of measuring your success as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it comes to evaluating your success as a parent or evaluating your child in terms of performance, there are a number of different psychological motives that could entail, some of which would be healthy, I think, and some of which would be problematic. So, and to the extent that they're problematic, they're going to lead you to look at performance in an unhealthy way. And to the extent that they're healthy motivations, then you'll have a sort of better rapport with the nature of your child's performance, if we are going to use, it's a broad category itself. But so just for example, I think we briefly touched on this before, but if your child's performance is a defense value for you, if your self-esteem is improperly coming from your comparisons of your child to another child or certain benchmarks that make you feel good about your success as a parent, if your child achieves those. And so it's kind of a filling in for a more constant, natural, healthy self-esteem. You're looking for these external cues to prove to yourself that you're good and that you're a success, that's inherently going to lead you down a bad path in terms of your relationship with your child's performance.
Yeah. And so it can take on this psychological valence where you get almost like jolts of self-esteem when, oh, my child, like I experienced this recently because Isaac could tell his left from his right pretty consistently. And I would not shut up about it. I told everyone. And
You told me.
yeah, I told you. I found out that like, oh, they usually don't get that till 4 or 5, and my child can get it somewhat reliably at 2. And it just kind of made me feel a little bit warm and fuzzy.
Mm,
And I was even aware at the time that like I don't want to paint myself too
of
harshly.
course not.
I was it was exciting for me. It was also just really interesting and kind of peculiar that he could do that. But yeah, those little jolts, if that could easily turn into almost like a kind of addiction where
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out, all right, how can I find another thing that Isaac's really precocious about and give myself a little bump of self-esteem.
Can I throw one thing in there?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the challenge with defense values, is that obviously there can always be great overlap between defense values and actual values.
Yeah.
And I think that personal experience, at least my experience with them, is that they can drift from one to the other. So it can be a legitimate value that in any given moment I'm experiencing as a defense value as opposed to a real value. So I think when you told me about the left and right thing with Isaac, it was, you were delighted by this new skill that he had developed. And it's fun to share with a fellow parent who also delights in the development of skills. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. That seems natural and healthy and wonderful. But I know what you're talking about, where within your own soul, you can feel those things sometimes drifting into a defense. And that's what we have to be cautious against, because if it becomes a pattern of that dominating our subconscious and becoming a driving force, I need to find achievements in my child so that I can feel good about myself, and I won't feel good about myself if I don't, then obviously it's seriously problematic.
Yeah. Now, something that's related to this, another way that an obsession with performance can seep into parenting is that most defense values also happen to be very marketable too. So whether your defense value is your looks, people can sell you a lot of garbage to make you think that your looks are going to be good. Or if your defense value is how smart your child is or how good they are at sports, there's no end to the special educational supplements or the tutors or the camps, anything that will give your child an edge in the spelling bee or in this basketball tournament or something like that. And so there's definitely it makes you really fall victim to all that. And it feels like it creates an illusion of progress that like, oh yeah, I'm doing a good thing for my kid because I gave them this thing that will make them perform better. And it could be good, it could not be good, but if it's all about where it fits in the hierarchy of parenting. Do you see your role as the parent as being primarily a performance enhancing influence in the child's life, or is there more to your relationship than just working with their performance? So I also think that this is something that maybe you didn't encounter when Coco was born, but it's really common. I've seen with kids around this time with Isaac being born, is there's lots of apps that will give you weekly updates on developmental milestones for your child. And I was very averse to them because I just thought, I don't want that in my head. I don't want to be saying like, all right, the app says he should do X right now. Is he doing it? Yes or no? But I know a lot of parents especially parents that, didn't grow up around little kids or don't have a lot of experience with children before becoming parents. This is kind of a lifeline for them. It's a way to tell, like, are things going well or not? If they don't have any sort of cultural guidance or philosophical guidance for what it means to be a parent, the obsession with performance can be something that fills that gap. So it's one thing for us to kind of say to me, like, don't get too obsessed with performance, but you need to have something else that's taking place in your mind. If I'm, you can imagine like the kind of stereotypical tiger mom or soccer mom, or they're always moms, stage mom or show mom, that is just their whole identity is making sure that their child gets into Harvard or gets the role in this play or is captain of the team. You have to have something that replaces that as your identity as a parent. And we would say that it's this idea of attachment that we've gone into in other episodes, but it's the appeal of performance is that you now have a metric that you can go by. You've got a standard to make judgments by in your role as a parent. That's kind of what lures you into it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that occurs to me is something you long ago coined the term CEM, Chief Executive Mother,
Yeah.
to describe the sort of person who kind of was a career person with managerial talents and skill set, has children and wants to sort of translate that approach to life, to the raising of their children, and the hazards that can come with trying to do a direct translation of executive life with the raising of children.
Yeah.
So it's that's always a danger. And that would definitely give you a performance. I mean, it's almost like you've got some kind of performance evaluation on your own job coming up, and you've got to prove that you have some measurable standard of success within your child. The one other quick thing I want to say is that when you talk about, desiring these metrics for measuring your child's success and the turning to the app for that as a resource, it seems to me that one thing that might be very helpful is just to look for that on a macro level and not on a micro level. So instead of looking at, detailed day-to-day measurements and performance, this to me is the role provided by a good pediatrician. That when you have your periodic checkups with a pediatrician, they're looking on a very big scale within a range of developmental differences to see whether your child seems to be progressing in a healthy way, growth-wise, physical growth-wise, and intellectual growth-wise. And I think you and I share a pediatrician, and I think he's quite good at that. He's got his kind of checklist of big topics to check in on each time he meets with the child. But it seems like when you get into that, the easy availability of information that comes through things like these apps can make you too compulsively focused on details as opposed to big picture growth.
Yeah. And the specialization is really, really important here, that there's roles for the pediatrician and also for a good educator, that they're the people that are more likely to be concerned with performance and developmental milestones, because one, they have a greater breadth of experience, even both in terms of the training that they get to be doctors and teachers, and then their firsthand experiences with a wide range of kids in the community. So they're going to be much better at spotting, like, this is out of place. This is something that needs attention, because of that specialized knowledge. But then also it's really, really helpful to outsource some of that way of thinking, because it makes space for you to focus on the more nurturing, loving, fun, enjoying parts of your life. And that's also, if we kind of go back historically and traditionally, there has been a bit of a division of labor, usually between the masculine and the feminine on this. The masculine is the outside world, is kind of preparing them for all that, is going to be more focused on performance, and the maternal or the feminine is going to be the more nurturing internal world. So there's kind of always been a bit of a division of labor on that. There's lots of gray area around all this, but and so what we kind of see is, this is something you see a little bit with the chief executive mom, which I hope that doesn't sound too mean. Like I'm not.
I find it helpful as a mother, as a filter for when I might find myself drifting into taking that approach. It's not so much my personality or my tendency, but I didn't see you as putting a label on a category of people with that term, but more just a danger of a direction we can go if we're not careful.
Yeah, it's this professional mindset, which could also be sometimes seen as a masculine mindset, if we want to get into that. Coming into a more domestic setting in a way that's not appropriate.
Right.
So now there's having good specialization really helps. Now, we have the benefit of knowing that we can send our kids to a school where we can trust that the division of labor is actually being fulfilled. And so there's room here for parents that think, no, I have to do X, Y, and Z supplements because the education is garbage where I am. But it's, you still gotta, I think, set some limits on that, and recognize that even if you have to supplement your child's education at home and, you know, keep up with their development of skills at home, you still want your primary relationship to be more nurturing and more based on mutual values and loves.
And maybe that would be achieved depending on how you're looking at the supplementation. If the supplementation is, I need to make sure they have a competitive edge, and you know, if it's really performance oriented, as opposed to, I really want my child to be able to thrive in life and have this kind of important fundamental skill set that's really going to empower them. It's going to change the whole nature of the way you introduce it to them, the way you measure their success at it, the way you handle challenges as they come up. All that's going to be different if your orientation is toward your relationship and the overall kind of thriving and well-being of the child, or some sort of external performance metric that they have to live up to.
So that's a good segue to kind of going to the flip side of this, which is, when do we think it's proper to become concerned with performance? You and I have kind of come to this pumping the brakes on that performance mindset, mostly because we're in Orange County, which has really strong performance orientation. You get to Orange County by being the top of your class. And so it's kind of self-selected for the people that are more likely to be performance oriented in life. And that also filters in the parenting. But when I think of when I want to get involved, I don't have too much direct experience with Isaac, because what am I going to help him perform at? Like, like feeding guinea pigs or something. But if I think in the classroom, where I am become very concerned with directly helping with the child's performance, is when I see that they are on a course where they're not going to, like, they're going to start to sink and fail. They're going to lose a growth trajectory. For the most part, I'm putting the lessons in front of them. I'm giving them steady feedback, and I trust their own maturation to help them grow. But when I get very performance oriented with students, say in my math class, it's when I can see that they are getting, like, they are missing concepts such that they won't actually be able to participate. I don't know if you have any a sense of that, like when it could be in the classroom or with your kids. When do you really get involved with their performance on some task?
Well, the clearest category for me of the place I become involved is when I see something holding them back from something they want to achieve that doesn't necessarily need to be there. Something is standing in the way of their own achievement. So for my kids, most of whom shyness is a real issue, this is where I might push them a little bit. And I always have to figure out where to draw a line between pushing them into something that they don't want to do and pushing them because they do want to do it, and they just need a little support and encouragement and nudging to get over whatever is holding them back, with the expectation that once they do that, they'll feel good about it. So that's the main place that I find myself pushing, is I can see there. Okay, I'll just give you an example that might be relatable to a lot of parents right now. My kids have a lot of home body inertia right now, I think, as a consequence of having spent so much time in the home in the last 2 years because of COVID. So whether it was because of lockdowns or because of just kind of societal changes, and they spent more time in the home than they would have otherwise. And it created this inertia with them, where Seth used to be obsessed with going to parks. He wanted to discover every park there was in Orange County. And then post-lockdown, it was like, let's go to a park. Nah, I don't really want to. Well, that's a place where I don't think the expression my read on the expression I don't want to is not, I don't want to in a serious and meaningful way. It's, I don't want to right now because of certain habits I've developed and because I've forgotten what's going to come of experiencing what you're suggesting. So because I have that kind of wisdom and foresight to see, no, you actually do want to go to the park. You're telling me you don't, but I know from experience that you do, you just have forgotten, and you just have this kind of inertia that you have to get over in order to experience the fulfillment again. So when I just through maturity and wisdom and experience can see you're expressing this as a value, but I'm very confident that you're misdiagnosing the situation and that you're actually not clear on what the real value is going to be to you. That's when I push the most.
Yeah. So tell me if this is a good way of recapturing what you're saying, that you, from a position of greater experience and maturity and wisdom, are able to better navigate them to their values. And so when you see that there is an obstacle to their values that is in some way artificial or doesn't need to be there, that's when you're going to get in and help them with things that could lead to better performance.
Right. And sometimes I might make a mistake and might actually be wrong. I can't remember if I've shared the story before of pushing Lana through ballet classes when she was 3. And I thought it was shyness or something causing this reluctance to engage, that if I could just urge her into engaging, she was going to get a lot out of it. And then it was like 6 weeks into the class that I realized she hates ballet. She doesn't want to do this at all. And I had to change course. So I'm going to make mistakes sometimes in doing that. But the idea is, it's not that they need to measure up to some metric outside of them and their values. It's when do I think that pushing them is necessary to help them to go after and achieve what I believe are actually their values. So I'll just make my best judgment of that and try to help them when I believe that's the case.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that there's kind of two sides to this. There's we kind of have broken bad parenting into the Augustinian and the Rousseauian. Yeah. And this is mostly an Augustinian thing. Like, you're very worried, like there's something wicked about your child that needs to be corrected so that they perform well, that they're inherently lazy or they're inherently sloppy. And so the role of the parent is to impose in that way. And then the other side, the Rousseauian side, is like, no, don't impose at all. Just let them naturally unfold and have no intervention whatsoever. And whatever they will, that's the best thing for them. And if we just remove all of the obstacles to the expression of their will, great performance will flower forward. And the benefit of these is that they're very simple ways of looking at things. Like, one side is, I'll impose my will, uber alles. The other side is, I don't have to really do anything and they can play Minecraft.
This is not really to flourish.
But when you get into the, not the middle, but the overcome that dichotomy, there's a lot of subtlety and there's a lot of room for error. There's lots of times where you might hold them to something because you think that they need to overcome just some immaturity. And maybe you're wrong, or maybe you'll intervene when it would have been better for them to kind of struggle through it on their own. And so there's a subtlety to judging when do you need to intervene to help them with their performance. But welcome to doing things the right way.
If I take your description there and just apply it to the situation with my kids and their home body inertia, if I took the Rousseauian approach, I'd just say that those are their values currently. They want to just sit around in the house and kind of be bored and whine that they have nothing to do but not go outside because for some reason that just doesn't sound appealing to them. That's not right. That's not true. They are lacking the experience to know that sometimes, as Harry Binswanger once brilliantly put it, your emotions are not good predictors of future emotions. Like, the fact that I don't want to go outside right now does not actually mean I'm not going to be happy when I go outside later. There's a certain amount of maturity necessary to see what might be making you feel that way in the moment, but it would be overcome later. And then taking the attitude the Augustinian attitude that you're talking about would be to look at them and say, something is wrong with them right now. They are being lazy. This is a bad, judging them as bad and wanting to correct this thing about them. And that's where I guess the performance perspective often comes with a judgment of your child as bad as they are and wanting to get them to something better.
Yeah.
I want to make sure we get to some comments here too. So Robert says, Merry Christmas, Lisa and Kyle, and to all our fellow Ayn Rand Center UK creators, producers, and listeners. Yes, Merry Christmas, Robert, and everybody else too. Thanks for the support. And Jean has a question. I think, if raising a child is your full-time job and self-esteem is tied to your productivity, how do you avoid seeing your child as a product? It's a really good question.
Yeah. Well, if it's your full, first of all, no matter what your job is, you're going to have a more diverse portfolio of values to draw self-esteem from. The Edith Packer identified 4 major categories: career, romance, friends and family, and hobbies. So having a more wide variety of values in your life from which to draw your self-esteem is going to help to not put too much pressure on just one value. But then more than that, there's a trap to thinking about. I was always bad at articulating this, but there's a trap to thinking about self-esteem as something you get from your performance, right? Like, I'm a good person and I can prove it today because my kid won the spelling bee. And when you get caught into that trap where you need to be productive every day and have something you show, or else your self-esteem withers, there's psychological problems to that. I'm not that good at articulating it because I suffer from it a little bit myself. But you're familiar with this concept too. Yeah. Maybe you can put words to it better than I can.
Go ahead.
I think the trap is that, seeing self-esteem is a thing that needs to be proven each day with what you produce. It's supposed to come more from an evaluation of yourself as a whole person. And when you don't have that same pressure to produce every day to keep your self-esteem inflated, then less pressure is going to be put on your child to be a product.
I think that's a fantastic point. And I'm going to come at the question a little bit differently. How do you avoid seeing your child as your product? So one of the themes of this podcast has been shifting the sense of what we regard as a success, being a success as a parent, and making that success have more to do with the relationship that you've cultivated and less to do with this performance sort of evaluation, or less to do with outcomes, as you've said, and more to do with relationships. So I think one of the challenges is that, yes, for a lot of parents, parenting is their career in a sense that it's their full-time commitment, but it does need to be looked at and measured and evaluated in a very different way than a lot of careers are. And so being careful to define what you consider. This is something I struggle with personally too. I've noticed even in the last few days with my kids that it's really the simplest of moments that are the most fulfilling as a parent. And I have to remind myself of that constantly, that it's not like, with the Christmas holidays coming up, it's not the grand gestures of Christmas gifts that are really going to make Christmas memorable. It was, driving around looking at lights and giggling over jokes that come up in the car. So it's weird to think I'm a success as a parent because I giggled over silly jokes and sang Christmas carols in the car, but that is so much of the success, is just these intimate, happy, fulfilling moments spent together. So obviously that's not the whole of parenting. There's a lot more to it than that, but just I want to kind of push towards a different sort of way of looking at success. And then if you look at your success in that way, product is not really how you'd see your child. It's more about just giving them a warm, happy, nurturing, fulfilling, stimulating overall childhood experience.
Yeah. I can try to concretize a little bit. We're on holiday break right now since school's not in session, and my wife is 8 months pregnant, and then also had side effects from a booster dose. So I was not quite a single father for a few days, and I didn't look at those days as I want my son to achieve certain things. Like I want to get him familiar with like these letter sounds or something like that. Instead, but I did still have outcomes that I was hoping for, which is I wanted to have him laugh. I wanted him to have a good nap. I wanted him to spend some time outside each day. And so you do set outcomes that you're looking for, but they're not, there kind of needs to be a boundary that the outcome you're looking for is not within the child. Like I want to create this character and create this skill and create this knowledge within the child. For one thing, there's this pesky thing called free will that will interfere with that. And for another thing, it's gonna compromise having the relationship be the primary value. And so I focus when I have long stretches of time with Isaac, which is wonderful. I focus more on the kinds of experiences. So the outcome I wanted for the day was to defrost the refrigerator. That was the thing I was working towards. And I wanted to figure out how to do that with Isaac by my side. And so he was opening up my toolbox and like taking out wrenches and poking the refrigerator and saying that he was helping me and stuff. I did not want him to learn the names of all of the tools or how to properly use them. But just to have a good experience with him was the kind of, you can't fully avoid having an outcome orientation because that's just how values work, is that there's outcomes we pursue. But you making sure that the outcomes are not within the child. That might be an important boundary to instead make sure that the outcomes you want are more environmental or experiential or relational. Those are the outcomes that you're working towards, might help with what's being described.
All right.
Yeah.
Time to move over to Clubhouse. That was very helpful. I love that.
Okay. I'll say that what I always say, if you have questions for us, or if you want to come on, we haven't had someone come on as a guest. That might be a little intimidating, but if you want to be a guest on the show, please write to enjoy.parenting.arc@gmail.com. For a lot of the questions that we get written in, Lisa and I always think if we could really get some concrete details and have a back and forth, we give a better answer. So we heartily invite you to be a guest on the show. We would love it.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll see you over at Clubhouse. Bye.